All right, choir, thank you. Okay, I need to have the kids come and join me, but we're going to start out over at the baptismal font again this time. The baptismal font is the water place over here, by the way. Some of you were wondering last time, what's the font? Okay. Today, once again, as I kind of like to do with children's sermons sometimes, we are going to go on a journey. Oh, come on, Charlotte, you can go on the journey with us. Hi. I know, Papoose is in a bathrobe. It looks really strange. Okay, so when we go on this journey, we are going to go on a journey from here over to the reading stand. Do you guys know where the reading stand? Can you guys all point to the reading stand? Lauren, can you point to the reading stand? Point to the reading stand. Okay. We are going to start walking very purposely. We just have one purpose. Just one purpose. Yeah, to get to the reading stand. Follow me. Yeah. Here we go. We are.
Everybody, look over here. There's a box over here. This has something really cool in it.
You think
You
so?
want to see what it is? It's got
No.
got to be something really cool here.
What's our one task? To get to the reading stand. Here we go.
You can come over here first, though. You can come and look in this box because there's a really cool secret in here, and I think you want to see what it is. Don't you want to look here first?
What do you think?
It's really good.
Hold on, guys.
Puppies.
Hold on. What does it say on it? It says, a box full of temptations. Temptations. What would be the thing that would tempt you the most? What if the box is, what if it's full of chocolate?
I think I smell chocolate.
Do you smell chocolate?
I think so.
Or it could be, what other kinds of things could be in there that would be wonderful boxes of temptation? Gold! Ooh. Yeah, the floor is kind of sagging underneath there. It might be full of gold. Full of Barbies. Wow.
It could be. You don't know until you
You
know.
just don't know.
Puppies.
Who? Oh, puppies. It could be full of corgi puppies. Puppies full of chocolate. No, that's not good. No, you wouldn't want to open that box. We have one task, right? Who wants to go check the box of temptation? Are you sure? Anybody else? Okay, Lauren, go check the box of temptations. Open it up and see what's in it. No, I don't. Is there a present for her? Is she going to get a prize? I think you have to flip it over on its end and then open the top.
Oh, there you go.
Oh. Is it, what is it, cups? No, I don't think so. A box full of temptations. Go ahead and open it up. Go ahead and help her out there, Ruth. Pretend like it's Christmas and it's birthday. Nothing! Oh, fiddly-diddly. You know what? It was just a box full of temptations. We better get back on our quest. Somebody's already there. Sophie, the wise one, is already there. And here we are. We made it. On the journey that we call following Jesus. A lot of times there will be, so what's a temptation? A temptation, maybe chocolate or Barbies or gold or something like that, but a temptation is anything that pulls us away from doing what we're supposed to be doing, which is following Jesus. And more than once, what happened? What happened, Lauren? The box was full of nothing. There was one wrapper, an empty There was one empty chocolate bar. Wow. Temptations are often empty, but oh my goodness, they are so tempting. Today in our story, we'll be hearing a lot of places where Jesus is actually tempted to go away from the journey that he was supposed to go on too. So he wasn't immune. All righty? Thank you. Thank you. Hey, Jim, tell us that story.
Our reading this morning comes from the Gospel of Mark, first chapter. They went to Capernaum, and when the Sabbath came, he entered the synagogue and taught. They were astounded at his teaching, for he taught them with one having authority, and not as the scribes. Just then there was in their synagogue a man with an unclean spirit, and he cried out, "What have you to do with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God." But Jesus rebuked him, saying, "Be silent and come out of him." And the unclean spirit, convulsing him and crying with a loud voice, came out of him. And they were amazed, and they kept asking one another, "What is this? A new teaching with authority? He commands even unclean spirits, and they obey him." At once his fame began to spread throughout the surrounding region of Galilee. As soon as they left the synagogue, they entered the house of Simon and Andrew with James and John. Now Simon's mother-in-law was in bed with a fever, and they told him about it at once. He came and took her by the hand and lifted her up. Then the fever left her, and she began to serve them. That evening at sundown, they brought to him all who were sick and possessed with demons. And the whole city was gathered around the door, and he cured many who were sick with various diseases and cast out many demons. And he would not permit the demons to speak, because they knew who he was. In the morning, while it was very dark, he got up and went out to a deserted place, and there he prayed. And Simon and his companions hunted for him. When they found him, they said to him, "Everyone is searching for you." And he answered, "Let us go to the neighboring towns so that I may proclaim the message there also, for that is what I came out to do." And he went throughout Galilee, proclaiming the message in the synagogues and casting out demons. A leper came to him, begging him, and kneeling, he said to him, "If you choose, you can make me clean." Moved with pity, Jesus stretched out his hand and touched him and said, "I do choose. Be clean." Immediately the leprosy left him, and he was made clean. After sternly warning him, he sent him away at once, saying, "See that you say nothing to anyone, but go, show yourself to the priest, and offer for your cleansing what Moses commanded as a testimony to them." But he went out and began to proclaim it freely, and to spread the word, so that Jesus could no longer go into a town openly. He stayed out in the country, and people came to him from every quarter. Word of God, word of life.
Thanks be to God.
In the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, amen. Something that I want you to think about, and I know that, kind of popping these pop quizzes on people, it's not totally fair, but I want you to be thinking about what is the purpose of Christianity? What is the purpose of the church? And a lot of times, I want to kind of tie that in to this whole idea of keeping our eyes on where we're supposed to be going, keeping our eyes on what the journey is supposed to look like. A lot of times when people, what is the purpose? Be brave.
Follow.
To follow, okay? To follow Jesus, alrighty? Some people will say, it's to worship Jesus or to connect with God. Some people will say that it is, but it's really important for us to understand what that's all about, because there are so many times that, remember, this story that we have today, as it started out, where was the first demon possession that Jesus had to confront? It was in church, right? And so that really tells me that we are not immune. I mean, a lot of times we think of demons and possession and we think of it happening somewhere out there. Demon possession is something that happens on Wall Street. Demon possession is something that happens in Washington, D.C., right? The swamp. Demon possession is something that happens in Hollywood. Ooh. But it really brings us up short when we actually hear the story and we hear that the first demon that Jesus had to confront in the Gospel of Mark is in church. It was just a normal day in the life of Jesus. He goes to church. And what have you to do with us, Jesus of Nazareth? And what are demons? You see, a lot of times too, when we hear that word, we hear of demons and we think automatically of The Exorcist, and we think of this poor little 12-year-old girl spinning around the room and puking up green pea soup. Well, that would be really easy. But when you think of demons, the word that the Hebrew people use for that word demon, the original word was shred, to shred. So anything that kind of shreds. And demons then are also the things that kind of shred our lives, as we're talking about with the temptations of being pulled away. You see, Jesus in our text goes through this whole business of temptation, and then he's launched into ministry. And we think to ourselves, all right, he's done. He made it. He passed. But you see, we'd be missing the point if we didn't realize that Jesus is being tempted all the way along. And sometimes he's being tempted by his own success. What are the things that pull us away from the purpose, the very simple purpose, even if you just simply say, following Jesus, and then what was Jesus' purpose? Jesus' purpose was not to have us worship him. You see that, in fact, all through the Gospel of Mark, he keeps going, stop, 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 stop. No, 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 because the second you start doing that, we start pulling off the path. Jesus had a purpose to kind of bring God and to bring God's presence and to bring God's love into the world. So even if following Jesus is then as simple as being able to proclaim and to do the things that share God's love, that share God's healing with the world. And the things that pull us away from that. I was reading a story just this last week about Mother Teresa. Wonderful. And it talked about the first time that she met John Paul II. You guys remember John Paul II? How many popes back? Was John Paul II the one that you played in, or you just kind of played a generic pope in?
I played the first female pope. I played the first female Lutheran pope.
There you go. Well, we can understand that. Okay, but John Paul II, and he was so excited to meet Mother Teresa because Mother Teresa had this big, wave of popularity. But when Mother Teresa and J2P2 met for the first time, it was really interesting because John Paul started talking about the fact that we want to bring you under the umbrella of the Catholic Church. Because you see, Mother Teresa was not part of the Catholic Church. She had created her own order. And he said, the habit that you're wearing is not official. And you really need to stop doing that, and let's put you into one of the already existing orders, and we'll have you work within. And you know what Mother Teresa did? It was sweet. She got up and she walked out. She walked out on the Pope because she said, "You're focused on things that don't matter." Her purpose was to be on the streets of Calcutta, reaching out to the people, the lepers, the poor, the people in India that desperately, desperately, desperately needed God's love. And the Pope was arguing about what kind of habit she was wearing. Now, she came back in eventually, and the Pope kind of got it because he wasn't. But how many times do we get pulled away? You see, temptations and demons are not always ugly and terrifying. I have to tell you, and I could get into some... Luckily, our bishop's not kind of doing this. But if you've watched or if you've looked into Lutheran or if you follow, when we have the ordination, when we have the installation of bishops in the Lutheran Church happening across the United States right now, it makes me disquieted, to put it nicely, because they all have miters, not our bishop. And she said purposely, "I won't go that way." But they're all wearing miters, and they have copes. We had a student when I was going to seminary who was so into that, we called him the liturgical haberdasher. Because even though he had not been ordained yet, he had a full set of copes, and cope is just a fancy churchy word for cape. But this is like no cape that you'd regularly have. These babies are made out of silk, they're brocaded, and he couldn't wait to be ordained so he could wear his cope. You see how easy it is for us? I mean, we have a lot of stuff that we have built up over the years, a lot of stuff that we like. The fact that I'm even wearing what I'm wearing could be looked at as being a barrier or something that could get in the way. And we have to really take a good hard look all the time to make sure that everything that we are doing is keeping our eyes on what Christ has called us to be, and to not let those other things get in the way. I remember about 20 years ago, because I grew up in the church. I loved the church. And I remember sitting at my desk and just really struggling with some of the changes that were going on. Some of the liturgical things that were trying to make things simpler, trying to get rid of some of the fluff and nonsense. And I remember it was one of those few times, usually God kind of whispers and kind of does little subtle stuff, but every once in a while God will kind of hit you between the eyes, usually because God needs to, because you're not listening. And I remember a voice so clearly saying, "Wes, you love the church." And I said, "Yes, I love the church." And the voice says, "Do you love the church more than you love me?" So many things in our lives can tempt us, pull us away. So many things in our lives that start out or could be really good. Jesus never stopped being tempted all the way to the very end. When he says, "Let this cup pass from me," isn't there another way? When there are people at the bottom of the cross saying, "If you are the Messiah, then do something magical and miraculous and lift yourself off the cross," all the way along, there were temptations to go a different way and a different route. To become Jesus Christ superstar. To become Superman. To step in and be that glorious hero that everybody, but all the way through, followers of Jesus. He kept telling us and showing us, be aware, be clear, You have one mission: to share God's love. Keep your eyes